Hello, this is Steve. Welcome to another YouTube video about B2 and C1 reading. I think I've made a really useful, interesting class here that I will be using with my students this week. It's about reading part 5, and the reading is always tough because you have to really think. And the point here is understanding the multiple choice question types and how to connect the correct idea in the text with the correct option from the questions, thinking about how these questions are made so that you know how to answer them. We will also do a bit of use of English and speaking because I'm making these texts. I try to take advantage of every aspect of them to really get all of the learning out of these texts that you can. So let's get into this. There's going to be a text on the screen and in the description which you can read about being left-handed. The first thing you do is just read it for context. Try and think, okay, what's it about? Get the typical ideas. What do you expect it to say? This helps so much. I know this because it happens to me in French and Spanish. When I read something and I think, oh, okay, I get it. This is a thing I've read before. This is an idea I'm familiar with. Everything becomes much easier to understand and to answer questions on. If you've got no idea what it's about and it's something really weird, you're going to struggle. It's going to have that like foggy, blurry, I don't quite understand what they're talking about. But the context will help you with that. So here you're thinking, okay, it's about being left-handed. Well, are you right or left-handed? How has it affected you? Do you care? Does it make a difference? Are there famous people who are right or left-handed? Does it lead to more artistic people being left-handed or people in sports? All these typical ideas that you might expect to hear. So that's task one, is read it. Go away, pause the video, read this in general, a minute or two to get the main ideas. Then have a look at the questions and try. I would recommend trying to answer them. All the questions are in the description. Try and answer them yourself first. 10, 15 minutes for a part 5 because it's a complicated text with complicated questions that require multiple reading. Tips, the questions are in order. Read it carefully. There's going to be different types of questions which we'll look at in a minute. Go away and get your 5 answers. There's only 5 questions for this one. There's 6 in the real exam. Once you've got your answers, we're going to go through them together and really try and explain them. So your first question was the main purpose of the first paragraph. So let's focus on this first paragraph and think about what it says. The main purpose questions is a pretty typical one. It's understanding in general what's the best answer, what's the important message or meaning. And it starts with a great trick because an early preference for which hand we use, it does say that. Yes, in fact, it starts with that. But it starts with it as just a little introduction to the topic. Is it really the main purpose that it's trying to get across? I don't think that's the best answer. So if you said A, sorry, that's not right according to me, and I'm the boss. Even though it does say it, it's not the main purpose. B, on the other hand, now we can see there is a bit more evidence for this. It is pointing out that scientists don't know very much about why people are left or right-handed. It says, to some extent it's genetic, but it's not enough to suggest that it's all genetic. Why we use it is unclear. So that really the whole point of this is that we don't know why people are left or right-handed. We know it's a mix of nature and nurture, like everything in life, but we don't really understand it. B is the correct answer. Well done if you got it. Let's look at the other two just to think about these typical types of questions. This is just not true. Hand preference is partly hereditary, but we can't say it is hereditary. It says it's not enough to suggest that it's purely genetic. And 2 left-handed parents only have a 25% chance of a left-handed child. So we can't really say it's hereditary. And is it comparing percentages? No. A percentage is mentioned, but we're not comparing them. So the best answer is D, and that is why, because like I say, the best answer, this is closest to the main meaning of this paragraph in my understanding, which I'm hoping is also your understanding because you read it and understood it the same way I did. Let's do the rest of these. For question 2, what is the example? The example is take the humble scissors. If I say take, it means this is my example. And the point here is it's A, isn't it? There are problems caused by items that are not made for left or right people. If you've tried them, you know it's frustrating. There's a problem because they are designed not for left-handed people. B, it's not really mentioned that children are flexible. It says advantages, but it's not saying it's great or anything. C, yes, it mentions that we shouldn't force children to use a particular hand, but that's not really the point of the example. And D, again, this is mentioned that it's a waste of time and you shouldn't do it, but it's not really relevant to the example. So the best answer is A. For question 3, in the third paragraph, being left out in history, slightly different type of question. I always think about these questions as basically 4 true or false questions, and you know one is true, and you have to find the true one. So you're just going to go down the list and say, is this true or is this false? And A is false. It says if you're right-handed, then God would save you. Being left-handed would not lead to salvation. B, not really true either. I mean, it says you could summon evil spirits, you were accused of witchcraft. Does that mean it's a source of power? Sort of, but it's not quite a direct, it says that. I think we can do better. C, they continue to impact education is not true. It mentions unfortunate attitude in the education system, but in the previous paragraph it says that modern theory proves this is a waste of time. So we can't really say, it doesn't say that it continues to do it. But D, this is definitely true, isn't it? Different languages, Latin, Anglo-Saxon, and French, they all have negative words, weak, clumsy, sinister. These are all negative traits or characteristics. So D is the best answer here. If you're getting these wrong, don't worry, that's normal. As I always say, you only need 60% to pass. So if you're getting a few wrong, that's normal. And this is the point, that these kind of questions you're going to get on B2 and C1, you're going to make some mistakes because it's about finding the best answer. It's not so simple as to say this one is correct, absolutely correct, because it says this. It's more like this one is the best answer because it says this. Maybe you could argue that B is correct if you really tried to argue it and if D didn't exist. But D does exist and D is like 70% correct and B is only 30% correct. So that level of nuance, that's what we need for B2 and C1. D is going to be the correct answer for the exam. For paragraph 4, an advantage of being left-handed is, again, this is a bit of a true or false one. A, no, because that's a myth. B, yes, because left-handed men make more money than right-handed men, at least in the United States, so it's a specific group of people. C, doesn't exactly say that. It says left-handed people pass their driving test, not that they're less likely to be involved in accidents. It's on topic, but it's not exactly the same. And D, no, because it's not left-handed people in general. We have to read the whole question, and you have to be careful that we can't say left-handed people have more financial opportunities because left-handed women earn less. So there we go. That's why that's the best answer. And the last one, this last type of question, understanding a phrase, an idiom, a saying that might not be such common English, but understanding it from context of the sentence. I like this question. I was quite proud of this one. So make or break, you can maybe guess what it means. It means you do it or you fail. But why are we using it here? The best answer is A. We are emphasizing that it's very important to make a decision quickly. This idea of split second refers to how the rapid decision making is important, and emphasizing it is important, and it's make or break. So the difference in being left-handed can be important because it's such an important moment of making that decision, and being left-handed gives you a slight difference. It's not B, it's about the advantages of being left-handed, it's not about how they can fail. It's not C because it's not a big difference in their technique. It says right-handed people find it slightly more difficult to aim. It's not really saying there's a big difference in technique. And it's not D because this is an example that's given that there was a cricket team, which if you follow my videos, I keep using as an example because I love cricket. There was a cricket team that was mostly left-handed, and cricket is a sport in which there are a lot more left-handed people than not in normal populations, but it's not dominant. There's still more right-handed people. So A is the best answer there. So you've got a total out of 10 marks, because remember in this part of the exam they are 2 marks each. And we've done a little bit of reading part 5 practice, very guided with me explaining it. But that's not the main activity today. The main activity today is in the same link in the description, I've got this text here about the first skyscraper, a building in Chicago. Again, a very typical B2-C1 topic. And now that we have seen how the questions are made, it's time for you as a student to start making your own questions, to start really understanding the text and thinking, based on this information, what kind of question would they ask me? What kind of thing am I expected to know for this reading part 5? So on this first paragraph, I'm thinking that we might have some kind of question. Take your time and read it first, obviously. Pause the video, read the text, get a general idea. Then come back and we might have some kind of question about the fire that is mentioned in the first paragraph. It's about a fire that burned down a lot of Chicago, so then they built new buildings like the first skyscraper. What made it worse? And we can see that I start with my idea. So like there's going to be, at least I think this is how I make these questions. You start with the idea that you want to test if the student understands. So my idea that I want to test if you understand is that first there was a small fire, which meant they used all of the supplies. Then there was a big fire, and that caused the real problem. So this is the idea that we're testing the understanding of. Can you follow this idea from the text? So I make a question based on this idea, and I write the correct answer, which in this case happened to be A, based on the random number generator. The fire was made worse by the previous fire. Yes, that's what it says. Then in the same paragraph, we're going to look for some wrong answers as distractions, as possible plausible answers that you think, testing your understanding of finding the correct information. So we could talk about the weather conditions because it mentions a hot and dry summer, but we throw a little distraction in with the decade because it's not the decade, it was only 1 year. Can you add 2 more wrong ideas? Try and pause the video and add 2 more wrong ideas yourself. Maybe one based on this part, such as people not obeying. Well, I should have given you more time there, shouldn't I? But we'll do the next one. People not obeying stricter regulations, or something about the population, which is relevant, but is it really what made the fire worse? Maybe make it a bit different from the correct answer by saying the rapid population growth, because it mentions that, but it's not such a good answer, such a direct cause as the small fire before it. So you see how I'm trying to build these questions. Let's do another one in the second paragraph. Here I'm going to make you do a bit more of the work as you start to understand this more and more. So this time I'm giving you a question and I'm giving you the right answer and 3 wrong answers. Can you write it yourself? Can you think what this might be? Try and do it. Pause the video, try and write something. This is where you're really learning something, is if you write it yourself. Okay, the innovation consisted of a steel skeleton in the building. So we might say that I've put them in order, haven't I? We start with a wrong answer, the materials. The new buildings were made of brick or stone. That's not the innovation, is it? That's something true, but it's not the innovation. B, again, it mentions the thick walls, large foundations. Again, it's mentioned, but that's not the innovation. The innovation is the steel skeleton, which could be a different lighter material, steel, for the internal structure, for the skeleton and supporting structure, similar idea. So C is going to be the best answer here, isn't it? And D, again, windows is mentioned, but that's not the point of the innovation. So as we said, not A, not B, C, yes, and not D. Can you do the same thing yourself this time? Can you just make your own question completely? In paragraph 3, we've got lots of information about this new building. Can you try and make your own difficult question for B2-C1 based on the information in this paragraph? I don't really have an idea. I mean, I could do it if I wanted to, but you're trying to find, like we said, find an idea in this paragraph, a fairly complicated one. You know, a good idea is not, when was the building finished? 1885, 10, 42, 55. That's too easy. It's far too easy. You need a complicated idea. Maybe this idea that it wouldn't stand out in the modern city. That really it was not that big compared to modern standards, but it was unique for its time. Can you have a question about that? What made it stand out for its time? Some kind of, or the fact that 2 stories were added later, so it changed later on. That could be the correct answer. And then the wrong answer could be something about the windows and the plumbing. And anyway, try and do something yourself. So that's the reading. That's how we're going to do the reading. I hope that's helpful. If possible, make some questions, pass it to someone else. If you're in a class, if you're studying with someone else, it's the best way to practice. It's just getting in and doing these activities. All right, as I said, we'll finish with a bit of use of English. So the same text, because I'm really trying to use everything. The yellow questions are use of English part 2. You need to complete the gaps with a little grammatical word like in, on, and at. And the blue questions are use of English part 3. You need to change the word so it fits the sentence. Pause the video, answer them, and now we're going to go through the answers. Number 1, are you ready? What is more? Typical Cambridge expression for adding more information at the start of a sentence. Additionally, furthermore, what is more? Number 2, an easy one, isn't it? Such as, for example, the elevators and the pipes. Number 3 is a good one, time markers. I think the only word that fits here is after. 5 years after it was completed. We can't say later or anything like that because of the structure of the sentence. This happened 5 years after it was completed because it's like a connecting preposition 5 years after this happened. Number 4. Oh, why is it the world's earliest skyscraper? Due to, or you could say owing to, or maybe thanks to. But due to and owing to do sound a bit better because it's not really. Thanks to is a bit more like almost a positive way of saying why something happened. This is more just the direct consequence. And number 5, an easy one, even though, of course, is the first skyscraper, even though it wasn't that tall compared to other buildings, like cathedrals and other buildings like that. Number 6, it was a. You've paused it, you've done them, you're trying your best. It was a success. Number 7, this is the tough one. You have to understand the context. They were not happy with what he was doing. How were they acting? They said this doubtfully. Does it even exist? Can we even build a building out of steel and glass? They were doubtful. They asked him doubtfully. Construction, okay, construction site. I guess could be tricky because there's a lot of other words from this. Constructive, constructively, and so on. But construction site. Number 9, who are the people who criticize? We can call them haters or we can call them critics. These are the people who are pointing out problems, and they are pointing out these problems as evidence that it was not stable. So a little use of English for you there. And to finish, a fun little bit of speaking. I think I've got a C1 speaking part 2 where we have to compare 2 of the 3 photos and answer the questions. I've got lots of videos on how to do this, the technique, remembering to answer both questions on 2 photos. So you've got 4 things to say because 2 questions on 2 photos. Pause the video, do it. What kind of jobs might be carried out and how might they make the workers feel? And your answer might go something like, well, working in an office at the top of a skyscraper, I imagine you are a CEO or someone who holds a very senior position in your big multinational company in London or New York or Shanghai or some important financial center like this. And how you'd feel working there, honestly, pretty good. I mean, look at the incredible view. You would feel like you were on top of the world, like you were living the Wolf of Wall Street best life. I guess maybe you also have your stresses and difficulties, but come on, you can enjoy that view. On the other hand, working from home in your garden, maybe it's not the big boss of a company, although it could be, but maybe it's just someone who works in IT or a creative person who works in web design or something where you can work from home. And I think you'd feel pretty good. I mean, you're surrounded by greenery. You don't have to commute every morning. You just get out of bed and go to your nice office garden. Whereas in the office, you have to get on the subway every day and there's sweaty, smelly people everywhere. So I think you'd also feel pretty good in the garden. So 2 nice places to work if you're lucky enough to be not in an office. So you do something like that. I didn't mention the Severance Workplace. Great series if you want to practice your English. Severance, recommend watching that. But you only do 2 of the photos, as you know, in C1. And for B2, you only have 2 photos, so you don't have to choose. And you only have 1 question, but it's still speaking for 1 minute. Anyway, that's everything. I hope that was a bit useful. I think if you've done all of that work, you're improving your English, which is sort of the point of why you're here. So come back next week.